What if I told you the first thing you drink each morning could silently determine whether you suffer a stroke in the next 5 years? And that nearly every senior I've treated made the same deadly mistake without knowing it? I'm Dr. Carson, a senior health specialist with 30 years of experience. And today, I'm going to uncover a morning habit that most people think is safe, even healthy, but may actually be one of the biggest threats to your brain. It's not in your genes, it's in your cup. The question is, are you drinking your way toward a stroke without realizing it? Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll have the answer that could quite literally save your life. Before we dive back into our health journey, I'd love to know where you're tuning in from today. If these tips are helping you live better, please hit that subscribe button. Your support truly means the world to us in spreading wellness. They say a stroke comes like lightning. No warning, no mercy. But I need to tell you something that may shake the very foundation of what you believe about your health. Because for many of my patients, the warning signs weren't flashing sirens or dramatic chest pains. No, it was far more subtle. It was something they did every single morning without thinking twice. Something you probably did this morning. Something so ordinary, so culturally accepted, that no one dares to question it. I'm Dr. Carson. For over 30 years, I've worked in stroke prevention and geriatric care, and what I've discovered still keeps me up some nights. The real danger wasn't just high blood pressure or clogged arteries. The danger, for far too many, started with a single sip. I remember one patient vividly. Her name was Margaret. 71 years old, energetic, sharp, still gardening every weekend and beating her grandchildren at chess. She came into my office on a Thursday, complaining only of fatigue and mild headaches. We ran some tests. Everything seemed routine. But then she did something that made me pause. As she opened her handbag, out came a large iced vanilla coffee, dripping with syrup and cream. "Just my morning fix," she smiled. "Keeps me going." I almost stopped breathing, because I knew what was happening inside her. Something she couldn't feel yet. Her blood, thicker from dehydration. Her arteries, constricting from caffeine and sugar. Her heart, silently laboring under pressure. Her brain, vulnerable and underfueled. The very first drink of her day was lighting a fuse. Less than a week later, Margaret suffered a minor stroke. Not because of bad luck, but because her body had been warning her for years, and no one had told her to listen. That's why I'm speaking to you now. If you're over 60, I want you to consider this. What if the first drink you have each morning, before breakfast, before medication, before anything else, is either helping you live longer or pushing you one step closer to a life-changing event? This isn't a scare tactic. This is a wake-up call. Because science now shows that the state your body is in after a night's sleep is vastly different than during the day. After 6 to 8 hours of fasting, your blood becomes more viscous. Your vessels become less elastic. Your brain cells begin to dehydrate, craving fluid. It's a fragile window, and most people unknowingly sabotage it by skipping water or worse, by drinking something that worsens circulation, tightens arteries, and encourages clot formation. You see, no one told us this growing up. We were told to grab a juice, sip a hot tea, or enjoy a sweet morning coffee. And while those might taste comforting, the physiological consequences, especially for aging bodies, can be devastating. What I'm going to share with you in this video could change the way you look at your mornings forever. I'll walk you through 5 common drinks, some seemingly harmless, even marketed as healthy, that may be silently increasing your stroke risk. And I'll also share the drinks that do the opposite, liquids that nourish your heart, support your brain, and reduce inflammation. But the most shocking part? The most dangerous habit of all is the one nearly every senior I meet is guilty of. And it's not what they drink, it's what they don't. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to avoid, what to embrace, and how to build a new routine that may protect your brain for years to come. This isn't about trends or fads. It's about science. It's about prevention. It's about reclaiming the years ahead with clarity, strength, and control. So before we dive in, I have a small request. If you care about your health or the health of someone you love, please consider subscribing to this channel. It helps us keep producing content rooted in real science, real stories, and real hope for people over 60. Every like, every share, every comment pushes this message further and helps us reach the people who need it most. Now, let me ask you a question, something I ask all my new patients on their first visit. It's a simple question, but your answer might reveal more than you think. Question time. Which of the following do you believe is more dangerous for your stroke risk? A. Drinking a sugary beverage first thing in the morning. B. Skipping water entirely for the first few hours after waking. Let me know in the comments below. Just type A or B. I'll be reading your answers, and I promise you, the answer might surprise you more than you expect. Now, let's begin. I still remember the first time I realized just how destructive morning drink habits could be. Not just for blood pressure or energy levels, but for the very survival of the brain. I was attending a seminar in Oxford on cerebrovascular aging. The keynote speaker, a respected neurologist, presented a series of brain scans comparing elderly patients who drank high-sugar or stimulant beverages in the morning with those who didn't. The difference was horrifying. The former group had far more microvascular lesions, tiny, silent injuries scattered across the brain's white matter, like scars you never knew were there. Not caused by trauma, not caused by visible illness, but by years of sipping the wrong things at sunrise. That discovery haunted me. And when I returned to my clinic, I began asking every single patient over 60 the same question. What do you usually drink when you first wake up? The answers were almost always the same. A cup of tea. A bit of juice. A latte from the shop. Just a Diet Coke, doctor. Only one can a day. And I knew in that moment we were facing a cultural blind spot. So many of us, especially as we age, are doing what we think is normal, what we think is harmless. But the truth? Many of these morning drinks are quietly triggering a physiological storm. Rising blood pressure, thickening blood, constricting vessels, and disturbing the heart's natural rhythm. It's not about what you eat later in the day. It starts right here, with that first sip. Let me walk you through 5 of the most common drink habits I've seen in my patients. Habits that seem harmless, but are silently setting the stage for stroke. And if you recognize yourself in any of these, I urge you not to feel guilty. Feel informed. Because the moment you know better, you can begin to choose better. That's what matters. First, there's sweetened iced coffee. It's often considered a modern ritual. Convenient, energizing, stylish. But beneath the cool surface is a metabolic weapon. Most iced coffees sold in cafes or bottled in shops contain more sugar than a donut. Combined with caffeine, it doesn't just raise your blood sugar, it causes your blood vessels to constrict rapidly, especially in the brain and the heart. Your arteries tighten, your heart races, and your blood, still thick from sleep dehydration, becomes even more prone to clotting. For an aging cardiovascular system, that's a perfect recipe for disaster. And the worst part, many people reach for it on an empty stomach, when the body is at its most vulnerable. Then there's packaged fruit juice, orange, apple, grape. They sound healthy. After all, they're fruit, aren't they? But when fruit becomes juice, especially the bottled kind, it loses its most protective component, Fiber. Without fiber, the natural sugars hit your bloodstream like a wave. Fast, hard, unfiltered. You experience a rapid spike in glucose, which forces your arteries to stretch and recoil under pressure. Over time, this leads to arterial fatigue, making them less elastic, more prone to rupture or blockage. I've had patients who believed they were doing something good for their bodies by drinking juice every morning, only to discover that their blood glucose patterns resembled those of pre-diabetics. The label might say 100% natural, but the vascular damage is very real. Then we come to diet sodas. This one is perhaps the most cruel of all, because it's the illusion of health that makes it so dangerous. No sugar, the can says, 0 calories, and so we trust it. We reach for it thinking we've outsmarted sugar. But artificial sweeteners like aspartame or sucralose don't leave your body untouched. They hijack your metabolism. They interfere with insulin signaling. And emerging research shows that they're associated with higher risks of stroke and memory decline, not just through metabolic confusion, but because they appear to affect the endothelial lining of blood vessels themselves. That's the smooth inner surface that keeps blood flowing freely. When it's irritated or inflamed, clot risk increases, especially in older adults. Worse still, diet sodas are deeply dehydrating. So while you think you're drinking something safe, you're actually thickening your blood further, taxing your heart, and dulling your brain's clarity. Fourth, we face the danger of energy and sports drinks. These are often seen as youthful, revitalizing, and performance-enhancing. But for an aging heart, they are a minefield. I've reviewed the electrocardiograms of older adults who drank energy drinks, and the data was striking. Elevated heart rates, irregular rhythms, blood pressure spikes. These beverages are loaded with stimulants, caffeine in extreme doses, sometimes mixed with guarana or taurine, and they're often laced with high levels of sodium and artificial coloring agents. The body over 60 is more sensitive to such ingredients. They may not cause immediate damage, but they erode resilience. They chip away at vascular stability and slowly undo the balance your heart and brain work so hard to maintain. And finally, there's the mistake of skipping hydration entirely. This, I believe, is the most dangerous of all because it's invisible. No taste, no packaging, just absence. When you wake up in the morning, your body is mildly dehydrated. You may not feel it, you may not notice it, but your blood knows. It thickens, your circulation slows, your brain cells crave water, and your heart begins to push harder to move oxygen around. Now imagine adding caffeine, sugar, or chemicals to that mix, without giving your body the hydration it needs first. You're fueling the fire before you've cooled the engine. I've seen patients come in with transient ischemic attacks, mini-strokes, who had no apparent risk factors. Their cholesterol was fine. Their blood pressure was normal. But they had one thing in common: poor morning hydration habits. When we corrected that, just that one small thing, their risk profiles changed dramatically. It doesn't take months. The benefits begin within days. This is why I urge everyone over 60 to look again, not just at what you drink, but when and how you drink it. Your first beverage of the day is not just a ritual, it's an instruction to your body. It tells your blood vessels how to behave. It signals to your brain whether it's time to thrive or time to brace for survival. And the beauty is, you're not stuck with your old habits. These can be changed easily, powerfully, starting tomorrow morning. So take a moment now, before we go any further. Think about what you drank this morning. Think about how long it took before you gave your body its first sip of water. And ask yourself, was that sip protecting you or putting you at risk? In the next section, I'll take you deeper. into the science of what happens inside your body each morning and how that fragile window of time shapes your brain's future. But for now, just hold on to this. Your brain isn't just what you feed it. It's what you water it with, and what you avoid. Because sometimes, the most powerful medicine is the glass you never picked up, or the one you finally did. It's a strange thing, watching your body from the inside out, understanding not just how it looks on a scan or how it performs under stress, but what it actually feels like to live inside it after decades of use. Over the years, working with seniors, sitting beside them in recovery rooms and watching them rebuild their lives after strokes, I've come to appreciate a truth that most people miss. We are not simply what we eat or drink. We are what happens afterwards. We are the reactions, the adaptations, the micro-decisions our cells make when no one's watching. And those decisions begin the moment we wake. Let me paint you a picture. Something few people ever think about because it happens silently, invisibly, but with great consequence. It's 6:30 in the morning. You stir from sleep. You haven't eaten or drunk anything for at least 7 hours. Your heart has been ticking quietly through the night. Your lungs have carried on their rhythm. Your brain has processed memories and flushed waste in the still, dark hours. But here's what else has happened. Your body is dry. Mildly dehydrated? Yes, but that's only the surface. Your blood is now slightly thicker than it was last night. Your plasma volume has dropped. Your blood vessels, especially the capillaries in your brain, have narrowed just a little. The fluid pressure around your cells has shifted. Oxygen isn't moving quite as efficiently, and your brain, the most oxygen-dependent organ in your body, is beginning the day at a deficit. You may feel fine. You might not notice anything more than a dry mouth or a stiff neck. But inside, your circulation is already having to work harder. Your heart rate rises ever so slightly. Your blood pressure is unstable. Your vascular system is compensating. Now, imagine instead of water, you reach for a sugary drink. Or you reach for nothing, for hours. That one choice sets off a cascade of microscopic stress signals. Your kidneys retain sodium to conserve fluid. Your adrenal glands may trigger a mild cortisol response. Your sympathetic nervous system engages. What could have been a gentle, supported return to balance becomes a tug-of-war between survival and sustainability. I've read thousands of blood work panels, reviewed hydration studies in patients over 60, and the pattern is always the same. When we're young, our bodies are resilient enough to recover from poor hydration habits. But as we age, that margin narrows. The buffer disappears. Dehydration that once meant little more than fatigue now becomes the tipping point for a clot. A narrowing. A temporary ischemia that becomes a permanent deficit. And the terrifying part? It doesn't feel dramatic. It feels normal. It feels like your regular Tuesday morning. When I show patients images of cerebral blood flow under different hydration states, their eyes widen. The difference between a well-hydrated brain and a dehydrated one isn't subtle. It's vast. Think of it like traffic. A hydrated brain has clear, open roads. Traffic moves smoothly. Deliveries arrive on time. But a dehydrated brain is a city under construction. Congestion everywhere, delays, blockages, and sometimes a complete shutoff. There is a term we use in neurology called hypoperfusion. It simply means your brain isn't getting enough blood. It can be transient, lasting only a few minutes. But in those minutes, vital neurons can die. Cognitive performance suffers. Balance weakens. Reflexes slow. And in some cases, a small vessel may give way under pressure, or a clot may lodge itself where flow was already compromised. You don't need to feel dizzy or confused for damage to occur. Sometimes, it's as small as misplacing a word, forgetting a face, or stumbling slightly as you rise from a chair. The signs are small, but the stakes are enormous. And the culprit, more often than not, isn't some rare disease or genetic fate. It's chronic underhydration, compounded by poor morning beverage choices. Now, I'm not telling you this to frighten you. I'm telling you because we live in a world obsessed with treatment, but blind to prevention. And the most powerful form of prevention, especially for the aging brain, isn't a supplement or a drug. It's circulation. Circulation is the quiet hero. It delivers oxygen, removes waste, balances temperature, regulates hormones. It is the courier of life. And every morning, before you've had your breakfast, before you've opened the blinds or stepped outside, your body is waiting for your help to turn the system back on. That help starts with water. Plain, room temperature water. No ice, no lemon, no additives. Just the elemental fluid your body has evolved to expect and depend on. When you drink it within the first 15 minutes of waking, you send a signal of safety to your cells. Your blood thins gently. Your kidneys exhale. Your brain receives a fresh pulse of oxygenated support. You move from cellular scarcity to abundance. You reduce the risk of clot formation. You improve alertness, memory, even mood. And, perhaps most importantly, you avoid the chain reaction that starts when the body senses dehydration. Because once that chain begins, it's very hard to stop. I often tell my patients that prevention isn't just about what you avoid, it's about what you support. Support your brain. Support your heart. Give them the first thing they need before you give them anything else. One of my favorite analogies is this. Think of your body as a garden. During the night, the soil dries. The roots tighten. If you pour fizzy drinks or acidic juices onto that soil first thing, you shock it. But if you water it first, with calm, consistent hydration, the garden wakes up. Gently, ready, resilient. Your body deserves that gentleness. It deserves that intention. So, tomorrow morning, I want you to try something. Before you check your phone, before you sip tea, before you touch coffee. Stand up slowly. Take a deep breath. And drink a full glass of water. Let it be your offering to the body that carries you. Let it be your first act of self-defense. Because the brain you save might be your own. And because the stroke that never happens, thanks to that one small act, will never make the headlines, but it will change the rest of your life. For years, I thought I was doing everything right. I exercised regularly, ate what I believed to be a balanced diet, avoided smoking, drank moderately. I stayed informed, kept my medical certifications up to date, and read every journal article I could find on stroke prevention. But despite all that knowledge, all that experience, it wasn't until I watched a close colleague, a man in his 60s, sharp as a tack, a leader in our field, suffer a completely preventable stroke that something shifted inside me. I stopped thinking like a doctor. I started thinking like a man on borrowed time. What good is knowledge if we don't distill it into action? What good are medical journals if they never become morning routines? That's why I started refining what I now call the morning reset protocol. It wasn't born in a lab. It didn't come from a pharmaceutical rep's brochure. It came from observing patterns, from asking deeper questions, and from watching what actually worked in real people over time. Because no matter how well you sleep, or how healthy your lunch may be, what happens in the first hour of your morning lays the groundwork for how your brain, heart, and blood vessels function for the rest of the day. And as we age, those early decisions matter more, not less. What we do when we wake isn't just about how we feel, it's about how long we stay here. So here is what I've learned, boiled down through years of study and human experience. If you want to lower your stroke risk, preserve cognitive clarity, and support your heart, you must make 3 deliberate decisions within the first 30 minutes of waking. The first is so simple it's often dismissed. It's hydration. Pure, consistent, unflavored hydration. And not after coffee. Not mid-morning. Immediately. Before anything else enters your body, you must give your blood a reason to flow. Your heart a reason to beat with ease. Your brain a reason to open its channels. One full glass of room temperature water, unhurried but intentional, is not a health tip. It is a neurological directive. It is your signal to every vessel in your body that survival mode can be paused and regulation can resume. You'd be amazed how many people believe they don't feel thirsty in the morning. But thirst is not always a reliable signal in later life. The receptors dull with age. The urgency fades, but the need doesn't. Your cells still wake parched. Your brain still wakes dry. And the only thing that corrects that is habit, not hunger. The second choice is one of restraint. It's what you don't consume. In those fragile morning minutes, you must resist the easy appeal of sugar, caffeine overload, and chemical sweetness. You must give your arteries peace. You must offer your pancreas a chance to awaken gradually, not with a bang. Your blood sugar must rise with the sun, not like a flare shot into darkness. This doesn't mean you must deprive yourself of comfort. It means you must redefine it. A healthy body over 60 doesn't thrive on stimulants or short-term jolts. It thrives on rhythm, on steadiness, on being treated like the finely tuned biological masterpiece it still is. So you say no to syrup-laden iced drinks, to bottled juices, to that sugar-free soda that's anything but. You hold the line, not because you're being strict, but because you're being kind. That's the difference. The third choice is where creativity comes in. It's not just about removing the bad. It's about finding better. I've seen patients come alive again, not just because they cut things out, but because they discovered new rituals that nourished them. Instead of cold, processed energy drinks, they chose warm lemon water with a pinch of Himalayan salt, gently rebalancing their minerals after sleep, helping with adrenal health, and restoring hydration without stress. Instead of juice, they made their own blended fruit waters with chia seeds, retaining the fiber, slowing the sugar absorption, fueling their brain instead of fighting it. Instead of diet sodas, they infused sparkling water with cucumber, mint, or berries, something beautiful, vibrant, and utterly safe for the heart. These aren't fads. These are nature's tools, reintroduced to a system that had simply forgotten what support looked like. I remember one gentleman, David, a retired teacher in his late 60s. He came to me after a series of dizzy spells. No stroke yet, but his blood pressure was unpredictable, his energy low, and his memory slipping. He was frustrated. He didn't want pills. He wanted answers. We made a simple deal. For 30 days, he would follow the morning reset protocol. No complex diets, no fasting, just 30 minutes of mindfulness each morning. Hydration, restraint, replacement. By week 2, his dizziness had disappeared. By week 4, his blood pressure had stabilized, and his cognition had noticeably improved. His wife told me he was more himself again, more engaged, more alert, more hopeful. Not because of some breakthrough medication, but because he rewired his mornings. And that's what I want for you. I don't want you to live in fear of strokes. I want you to live in awareness. I want you to wake each day knowing that you are not helpless in the face of age. You have tools. You have agency. You have choices. And those choices, when made consistently, accumulate. They build. They restore what decades of routine may have quietly worn away. You don't need to overhaul your entire life. You just need to command your morning, to rise not just physically, but physiologically, with purpose, with precision, with self-respect. So tomorrow, when you open your eyes, remember this. Your morning isn't just about getting going. It's about giving. Giving your body what it truly needs before the world makes demands of it. Give it water. Give it patience. Give it better. And in return, it will give you more years, more clarity, more time. That, to me, is not just medicine. That is mercy. And it begins with the simplest of decisions. I've always believed that the most powerful medicine isn't something you swallow. It's a decision. A moment when you pause, reflect, and decide that from this day forward, you'll choose differently. Not because you're scared, but because you finally see what was always in front of you. That moment, that internal shift, is what I hope I've brought you to now. Over the course of this message, we've taken a hard, honest look at something many people overlook: the morning. Not just how we wake, but how we rise in action. How we greet the day not with chaos, but with clarity. And how, especially after the age of 60, the smallest choices in that sacred window between sleep and motion can either protect our brain or betray it. But awareness alone isn't enough. It must become action. And action, to be sustainable, must be rooted in something deeper than facts or warnings. It has to come from a place of ownership, of love, a vision for a life that still holds meaning, possibility, and time. You see, I've sat beside too many hospital beds. I've held the hands of too many patients who wish they could go back and undo what they didn't even realize they were doing. And more often than not, they say the same thing: I didn't know. That single sentence carries so much weight, so much sorrow. Because once the stroke happens, once the damage is done, yes, there is healing. Yes, there is rehab. But there is also grief. A quiet mourning of the time lost, the words slowed, the body that no longer responds the way it once did. That's why this isn't just a video to me. It's a lifeline, a preemptive strike against that grief. I don't want you or someone you love to be the next quiet casualty of an ordinary morning. I want you to take back that hour, to honor it as the most important health decision you'll make today, to treat it with the same reverence you'd give to medication or surgery or a doctor's advice, because it is all of those in one. It's preventative medicine disguised as a simple daily ritual, and it's yours to control. So now I must ask you, what will you do tomorrow morning? Will you rise and rush into your routine, grabbing whatever's easy, whatever's familiar? Or will you pause? Will you honor that body, that brain, that heart that's carried you through 6, 7, maybe 8 decades of life? Will you reach for water, for calm, for clarity? Will you say no to drinks that overstimulate and undernourish, not out of guilt, but out of respect? Will you commit to making this not a one-time effort, but a new baseline, a new normal, guided not by habit, but by wisdom? You don't need to change everything overnight, but if you change your morning, you change your momentum. You begin the day from a place of strength rather than stress, from a place of balance rather than reaction. And that energy, that grounded, stable start, ripples through everything else. Your focus, your mood, your memory, your resilience. I've seen it firsthand. Patients who once struggled with fatigue, confusion, even dizziness, transformed by nothing more than a conscious shift in how they began each day. A glass of water, a better drink choice, a few deep breaths before anything else. It's not dramatic, it's not glamorous, but it works. And I want you to experience that shift too, not in theory, but in your own life. So let me invite you into something more than just education. Let me invite you into community. If this message moved you, If you learned something today that made you stop and reconsider your habits, I ask you not just to reflect quietly, but to respond publicly. Leave a comment below and tell me, what's the first drink you'll choose tomorrow morning? Not because I need to know, but because someone else might read your comment and be inspired to act. Your choice could be the turning point for someone you've never met. That's the beauty of this space. We don't just learn alone. We heal in collective motion. And if you believe in what we're building here, this place where science meets compassion, where habit meets health, I invite you to subscribe to this channel, not out of obligation, but because it helps us reach more people who need this message before it's too late. Every like, every share, every new subscriber is another ripple of prevention, another soul possibly spared. We're not here to scare. We're here to empower, to wake people up before their lives are irreversibly changed by something as preventable as a morning mistake. So tomorrow, when your feet touch the floor, remember this conversation. Remember that someone, maybe me, maybe a loved one, maybe your own quiet intuition, told you there was a better way, and that you listened, and that you acted. That is what it means to live with intention. That is what it means to take your health into your own hands. Not someday, not next year, but now. You have the tools, you have the knowledge, and from this moment forward, you have the choice. Thank you for being here. And thank you, most of all, for caring enough to stay. Until next time, stay sharp, stay hydrated, and never forget that your next drink might matter more than you think. In the end, it all comes down to this. Small decisions, repeated daily, shape the quality and longevity of our lives far more than rare, dramatic changes ever could. We tend to believe that health is about pills, procedures, or DNA, but in truth, it's about awareness. It's about learning to observe our own habits and asking hard questions about whether they serve us or slowly sabotage us. This entire journey we've taken together, exploring the silent impact of your morning drink, was never just about what's in your cup. It was about reclaiming that first moment of your day, turning it from automatic into intentional. You now understand that your body wakes up in a state of vulnerability. Not because it's weak, but because it's recovering, rebalancing, and recalibrating after sleep. And in that fragile window, what you put into your system matters more than most people realize. Will you feed inflammation or reduce it? Will you constrict blood flow or support healthy circulation? Will you nourish your brain or deprive it? That choice, that sip, is never neutral. It's either helping or harming. What you drink each morning sets off a chain reaction that affects your hydration status, your blood pressure, your cognitive clarity, your metabolic balance, and even your emotional resilience. This isn't theory, it's physiology. And what that means is powerful. Because it means you're not helpless, you're not stuck, you're not at the mercy of age. You are in control. So take what you've learned here and apply it in the simplest way. Start your day with water. Remove what no longer serves you. Sugary lattes, boxed juices, diet sodas, and stimulant-heavy drinks. Experiment with better alternatives. Let your routine become a reflection of your values: clarity, longevity, strength, intention. Let your mornings become a sacred space for healing, not harm. And remember, the biggest transformations rarely begin with grand declarations. They begin with one humble choice, one glass of water, one better drink, one decision to wake up for yourself, not just physically but mentally, emotionally, and purposefully. The deeper lesson? Health is not about avoiding death. It's about investing in life. It's about making each day a chance to live more clearly, more fully, and more consciously. That power is in your hands every single morning. And the ripple effect of that one healthy habit may reach places you can't even imagine yet. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Here's a simple question. What will your first drink be tomorrow morning? And why did you choose it? Please share your answer in the comments below. Let's inspire one another by turning ideas into real-life changes. And if you found value in this message, please consider subscribing to this channel. It's free, and it's the best way to help us grow and bring more helpful content to you and others who need it. Finally, if you feel this content has positively impacted you and you'd like to support our work, we welcome your donations, no matter how small. Every bit helps us stay independent, ad-free, and focused on creating life-changing, evidence-based health guidance for you and your loved ones. Thank you for being part of this movement. Here's to better mornings, sharper minds, and stronger hearts. Starting now.